Welcome back to Prof E Plays. I'm Prof E, and what I've decided to do, while we have finished the Vault of Zanmar, this is going to be episode 5 of my Dungeon Crawl Classics series, where we have 10 of the 13 who went into the Vault of Zanmar came back out alive. I leveled them up to level 1. Right, so I do want to give a little update on these characters and kind of what I decided to do with them. I debated whether I wanted to level them up on screen or off. I decided to do it off, which given the number of them, I think made sense. So I want to talk a little bit about them and kind of what happened. So you know the story so far, they went to the Vault of Zanmar to recover what ended up being a scroll that contained on it some kind of spell that could be used to summon a demon into this world, which was going to end up being very bad potentially. But so that is what it was going to do. But handed that over to the nameless cleric, right, who we don't actually have a name for yet, thus nameless cleric. Handed it off to him. Apparently, we thought he was trustworthy or something, and that's that. Then all of the 10 have leveled up. What I decided to do, kind of thematically here, is that I've decided that here in this little town, this is the town of, I don't remember the name off the top of my head, Rose Lake. Rose Lake, yeah. So it's on the edge of a lake, appropriately enough. I assume they have lots of roses that they grow in this town. So these 10 people, because of the experience that they have had together, right, they have decided to form their own little adventurers guild, right, where they are going to be willing to go out and do these kinds of things, right, leaving behind their old um, occupations. So just to let you know what they have decided to do, Vilbo didn't really have any choice because he's a halfling. And the way that Dungeon Crawl Classics works, it pulls from kind of the old tradition of the demi-humans are a class in themselves. Right? So they don't really choose a class. So you would not have a halfling wizard, for example. Halfling is simply a halfling, and the halflingness provides certain abilities. Specifically, two-weapon fighting is what they're really good at. Now, Vilbo doesn't currently have a second weapon because I, and therefore they, did not have the presence of mind to grab any of the treasure that we found in the Vault of Zanmar. And they hopped on the ships and came back home. I just thought it's not worth it for them to hop on the ships and go back. Let's see how many of us fall off the bridge this time. Right? You don't really want to do that. Right? So they are definitely under-equipped. Let's just put it that way. Under-equipped compared to what we might expect from somebody who has actually been through a dungeon, because the only thing they grabbed was the thing that they went there for. They didn't bother, right, getting any other loot. Right, so anyway, so Vilbo is a halfling. Right, Jolly, who was previously a jester, decided to become a wizard. Right, so that is what we decided to do with him, because none of his stats really stood out as being particularly great. His personality is the only one that had any kind of a modifier on it, and so that would potentially push him more toward being a cleric. But I already had a couple others that were a better match for cleric, so he is going to be a wizard. Okay. Then we have William, previously a woodcutter, is also going to be a wizard, right, as well. Um, this is because William actually has fairly high intelligence, therefore he's actually pretty well set for spell casting. Uther, the urchin, being the one chaotic character in the group, decided to become a warrior of all things. Now, this is mostly reflecting the fact that he has fairly high strength. So now it is true in terms of equipment, all he has is a stick. Apparently, he lost everything else that he was carrying because I forgot to copy it over to this character sheet. Them's the breaks. All right. It's one of those things where, like, when I play solo, I'm an extremely strict GM. When I play with my kids, I'm less so. I'm mostly just trying to get them to stop bickering with each other. Vord we know is a wizard's apprentice, but apparently he decided after this trip that that was not actually a very good match for him, which actually it wasn't. His intelligence modifier was a -2, so he was not going to be. We're going to see lots of spell mishaps from him, most likely, if I had sent him down that path. So instead, has become a warrior, reflecting the fact that he does actually have a positive luck modifier, which is used to modify his HP each level. Right, so So he now has 14 hit points, significantly more than say Uther the urchin who has 4. Yes, you rolled so he already had a couple hit points coming in as a level 0 character, and then I rolled a d12 to add more hit points. Rolled terribly, and he has a stamina modifier of -1, right? So it's actually made even worse as a result of that. Marv. Marv the Mendicant decided to become a thief, reflecting his reasonable agility score. Okay. So he's a lawful thief, however, which kind of in universe means he probably belongs to some kind of organization, which we know they formed an adventurers guild, so this makes sense. Uh, I also have another thief in here. Who was it that also decided to become a thief? Phineas. Yes. Phineas, whose brother Ferb died in the previous um, adventure, so feel free to watch that and find Ferb's death if you wish. Because he has fairly high agility, he decided to become a thief. Meanwhile, then we have a set of clerics, 2 lawful, 1 neutral. Right? Igor is a cleric, as is Weston and Helton. There we go. So that is that. So you have here, I tried to divide it up so things were relatively even. So we had maybe 2 or 3 of each class, with the exception of we don't have a dwarf, we don't have an elf, and we only have 1 halfling. But going through a dungeon doesn't make you decide to become an elf. That isn't a choice you get to make. All right, so that is that. The other choice, so I'm really just kind of this is a lot of setup actually for kind of what is going to be coming next. Right. So level 1, that is who we have. The next thing I want to do, uh, so one thing that I debated was what I want to do in terms of kind of the tools that I'm using. Right. So obviously Dungeon Crawl Classics I'm still using, and it goes without saying it is the series that I'm doing. And apparently this seems to be reasonably popular in that people are actually tuning into this much more than my previous series. Right. So hey, all right. I also have enjoyed it, which really is cool. I actually really look forward to having wizards having spell mishaps. Really, really enjoy that. Oh, speaking of, so if you're watching this to try to get a feel for Dungeon Crawl Classics and the kind of game that it is, it has a reputation for being a bit. I've seen one YouTuber call it gonzo, and actually seen several people use this type of term for it. That seems right, actually. All right. So, one thing where things get kind of wacky is with wizards and how magic works. And so, one of the elements of magic is that whenever you learn a new spell, uh, that spell is unique to you as the caster. So while it is true that like lots of people might have sleep spells, I actually managed to roll sleep spells for 2 out of my actually I only have 2 wizards. Yeah, for both of my wizards. So both of my wizards have a sleep spell, which is a pretty good spell as far as that goes. But they're going to be somewhat different in that 2 ways, right? One is you roll on a manifestation. The first time you do a spell, you roll on a manifestation spell, and that kind of gives a sense of what does it look like visually when you do this, right? So sleep is going to look different, most likely, for my 2 casters. Another thing, though, is that when you first learn a spell, as part of the learning process, you roll on a mercurial effect table. And what the mercurial effect table does is it provides some kind of modifier right, to that spell. So it's not just, oh, you're just casting sleep. There's some kind of other impact that happens. Right. So for example, for one of my wizards, the sleep spell, um, I think it's just vanilla. Yeah, so I rolled on the Mercury effect table, and there is some chance that it's going to say, you just have the spell. And that's what happened here. The other, William is the one when I rolled sleep. What I got here is that for him, this is hard to cast, which means instead of using a d20, he's going to use 2 die steps lower than that. That would be a d14, right? Which the way we do that practically is you roll a d20, and if it's anything above a 14, you just roll again. But so we have these 2 different spell, and it is the same spell in terms of the practical effect, but one, the manifestation will be different, and two, it acts differently for the two of them in that they cast it somewhat differently. Another thing, here, I just had to share this one because this one, when I rolled it, I mean, I love when things go terribly for my characters, which I think is part of why I want to play music classics. Yeah. Because there's a great potential for things to go terribly, and I love it. Right. So there's this one spell which has a somewhat unpredictable effect. It's called Ecum's Mystical Mask or Magical Mask or something like that. I don't have the exact title in front of me. I just have it Ecum's Mask. Um, is written down, and like the level you roll it at, that changes the effect, right? So it could be things like it provides some level of protection, or perhaps helps your attack rolls because the mask, I don't know, helps your sight or something like that. But, but what both of them actually got that spell too, which is wild. I'm randomly rolling four different literally it should be four different spells randomly rolled, and that we got overlap in both sleep and Ecum's Mask. But okay, so here are the material effects on this. Right. So the one for Jolly, right? That's just a very hard spell. So again, two dice stepped down. But for William, get this as a mercurial effect. The description was at great cost, which means that every time William casts that spell, someone he knows dies. And it's up to the judge, the GM, to decide who it is that dies. Isn't that awesome? I just love that so much. Of course, like William being lawful, once he figures this out, he's not going to do it. Right? But I just love that that is one of the potential effects. Right, so you get that kind of thing, and then some of them are more negative, like the ones that I mentioned already. Some are more positive, right? So he also has his read magic ability has chain casting, which means that each time um, if you cast that spell multiple times in a row, then you get bonuses added to it. So you get so the second time you get a +1 added to it. The third time you get a +2, and this accumulates to I forget how high it goes. I think it goes as high as I think your spellcasting modifier is the total. So you can effectively double what your spellcasting modifier is. So I think that is really pretty awesome as far as that goes. All right, or maybe it's a luck mod. I forget exactly what it is, but there is some app on this. Like, or this was another one that I thought was really cool as well. So is skeletal caster is what this effect is, which sounds like it's a bad thing. Uh, and I mean, visually it's spooky in that you might end up getting confused for undead because effectively all of your flesh becomes transparent, right? So you look like a skeleton. But it also has positive things to it in that you get what is it? You get another D4 plus two or something like that. Ace. Oh, that's right. It's uh, so you get +2 to AC, I believe, to missile attacks, or 1d4 +2 to, it's something like that. I have to double check exactly what it is. But I think it's a cool effect, right? And that it because now you look like a skeleton, it's harder to hit you with arrows or what have you. For this other one, um, not necessarily positive or negative. The Tide of Ash, where everything within I think in my case it's a 10-foot radius because it's based on the level of the spell. Everything within a 10-foot radius of you, any vegetative matter just turns into ash. Anything that was already dead is unaffected, but that's kind of cool, right? These are neat effects, which make it so that when you're doing, you know, spider climb or whatever, it's not just all the same spell. It is individual to the caster, the manifestation and the mercurial effect. So I really, really like that about the system. All right. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the system and kind of where I'm going there. The next thing that I want to talk about is I mentioned before, right, that I'm not convinced that the game unfolding machine was the right solo tool for this system for me. Right. I like conceptually, I really like that tool. I like what it did for the setup. I thought it was really, really good for that. But in terms of actually playing the game, it is not well designed for creating a dungeon as you go. That wasn't really part of what Jensen Vars had in mind. He wasn't thinking, well, how can I help somebody create a random dungeon? That wasn't really what his purpose was. And therefore, it couldn't do that. I mean, we could use it. Right? We could figure out how to use it. But if I want to play this more tactically now, which and you can see from what I have set up, I do have some of my figures set up here. Um, yeah, oh, and you can see what I have. Like these are just super cheap um, little figurines. Oh, oh, well, okay. Responsiveness of the camera was kind of weird there. Right, so these are super cheap little figurines here. I forget how much they were on Amazon, but I just had them on my wish list, and my wife got them for me for my birthday or something like that. Right, so I took that, took some paint that I had laying around, right, to distinguish them from each other. So I can use those. Then I like to make these things, which I think you've seen before, probably if you watched my series with my kids. Right, where I just take a piece of cardboard, typically from a cereal box or something like that, and then I print out whatever I want to have. So in this case, this looks like a paladin or a warrior or something like that. Yep. And then I just use a clip right effectively as a base, so then it can act as a little standee. It's not particularly the most stable thing. And then I also have as generic ones, the ones that just have numbers on them. Again, it's you can see it's a Cheerio box. Right? It's so I took a Cheerio box, cut it up, printed out numbers, right? So in this case, this would be the number 7, right? And then I hot glued it right to a base that's roughly 1 by 1, so it goes well in a 1 by 1 grid, right? So I think that's what I'm going to be using as some of the tools here because I do like grid combat because I like board games. Right? So adding that board game element is something that I kind of enjoy. All right. And I think now that I'm down from 13 to just 10 characters, I think I'm going to try some gridded combat just to see how I feel about it, I guess. All right. So back then to talking about the game unfolding machines as I've gotten distracted the whole time. All right. So I think what I'm going to try using instead this time is a combination of a couple things. And this is something solo RPG people do this all the time, and it kind of drives me crazy when I'm watching other, let's say, YouTubers talk about doing this. Like, oh, I'm going to combine this with that. Well, just pick one thing, but then I'm going to combine this with that. So here we go. Right. So first thing, I'm going to be using from Mythic 2E the threads list and character list. Like, I'm not going to be using the fate chart or any of the like, what is the chaos factor, that kind of stuff. I'm not going to be using that. I'm instead just going to be using the list format because I really like this list format. That's really it. So the idea here is if something happens to a character and I need to randomly determine what character it is, I just have a list of characters here, which would include, I'm going to have all 10 of my PCs listed, and then I'll add any NPCs as well. Right? And then also the same thing for plot threads as well. I will list those out. And then you just roll randomly. And it's really set up well, right, in that you kind of have these sets of 5, right? So once you have 5 here, then it says 1 to 2, right? Right. So if you only have 5, then you're just rolling a d10, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? But once you go past that, then you can roll a d4, right, to determine is it 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then within each of these sublists, right, then you would roll a d10. Right? So I think it's a nice way to handle the fact that the size of this list will change over time. Another thing that I like about the philosophy of Mythic 2E in dealing with the list is that you are encouraged when you roll something or when somebody appears again or a thread comes up again, that you add it on here multiple times. Right. So then you could have up to a maximum of 3. And that allows you then to have kind of main characters emerge as you play, or kind of main plot threads emerge as being more important, and that makes it more likely they would be randomly chosen. So I plan to use that particular philosophy when dealing with this list. All right. But in terms of my main solo engine, what I think I'm going to use, I'm going to pull out, this is my solo resources binder. I keep stuff in. That's what a binder is for, Professor. True. Very true. All right. What I'm going to be using is the one page GM emulator, which is a bit of a misnomer because if you print it all off, I want to say it's like 4 pages. No, one page is just like a cover page. But I have printed 3 here because I didn't bother printing what I didn't have much on it. Right, so the one page solo engine The version here I'm working with is 1.6. I don't know if this has been updated or not. Uh, well, at least when I got it, you get on a pay what you want basis from a drive-through RPG. So I will include a link to that. Right. So, uh, so the basic idea here is that it uses a combination of two things. So one would be it uses D6s, right, for a lot of the stuff that you want to do. The second thing would be that it uses a deck of standard playing cards, right, like so. I guess I did have that already on camera. There's a deck of playing cards. So, and then you have a number of oracles and the like available to you. But one of the things that it includes, and this is why I decided to go with this, is I thought, well, I want to have some way of generating a dungeon randomly. And I have a few different options available. Like one, because I run D&D for my children, though I haven't recently, um, so those videos have not been coming out, because when I ask my kids to play, my oldest says, no, I want to run, which he has run a session for me and his 7-year-old brother. He ran, I think, a couple sessions, which were fine. I mean, it's something like he's still learning, but it's fun. It's fun. So it's a fun process. Meanwhile, my 10-year-old is perfectly happy to play, but he doesn't want to play by himself. I don't really want to run for just him by himself either, right? So those that sort of made me done, honestly. Those might be a while till we come back to it. I think also that one thing that I think bothered my 12-year-old uh, was that, and my 10-year-old mentioned this as well, is that it wasn't clear when the game was going to be over, right? Which I think is an interesting thing. And I was imagining it as something where it won't be over, right? Okay, you have an adventure, these things happen, then you have another adventure and other stuff happens, and I was thinking of it as progressing that way. But I think they might do better with a more limited campaign rather than an ongoing campaign that lasts potentially forever. Right, so and then maybe the ability to make new characters now and then. That is something that might possibly be beneficial. So something to just think about. All right, but so when I talked about random dungeon creators, so one thing I could use the the DM guide, and it's a good resource, honestly, for this type of stuff. I've used it to create dungeons before, right? So I think that that's not bad. The second resource I have is that what first got me into solo gaming was my wife getting me Scarlet Heroes, and Scarlet Heroes does have it's an interesting book, and the way that it is written, it is very much designed for somebody to run for somebody else. And it looks like we lost the connection here. Oh, there's back. All right. So it's very much designed for an individual PC, but an individual PC with a game master is the way it seems like it was envisioned. Right? But the thought was clearly there that we might have people that just want to run by themselves, right? So they also includes three different ways you can play solo. So there's a hex crawl, a dungeon crawl, and then also an urban-based adventure rules as well. And so there's the dungeon crawl there, which I like the rules there. Um, but I want to try something different. So I thought, okay, I thought about that one. So I think I'm going to use some combination of two things, right? So one that I want to do because I've not really used this. Honestly, don't know that I've used it at all in the past. It is the one page solo engine. I've used the solo engine before, but I've not used the dungeon crawler before. I don't think. Right. So that is one that I think that I'm going to do some. And then one more tool potentially is Don John, their website. I think I'm going to say it's like donjon.bin.sh or something like that, which I've used before for creating random dungeons for my kids. Right. I really like it because it's everything in there. It's so nice. It's so nice. So that is another tool that I may potentially use. One more, right? So, uh, what's it? Yeah, I think it's Tana Pigeon, I want to say it was. Yes, right. Has another tool, the Location Crafter, right, which is a way of crafting locations and what's on the tin. Right. So that is also something you could use to make dungeons as well. right? So all of these are different things that I kind of have in mind as maybe trying at various points as we play, right? So, but for now, right, for the next adventure, I really should wrap up this video since I'm just talking through the whole thing. So for the next adventure, I think what I want to do is actually use the dungeon crawler from the one-page generator. That is my goal there. All right. So I just wanted to kind of provide this as a kind of an interstitial or something like that between our level 0 and level 1 adventures. And so that is kind of where I'm going at this point. I will also want to be making a kind of an updated um, random encounter table of sorts. Again, designed off of what there is in the Dungeon Crawl Classics book, and maybe toss in some other things that I find elsewhere. But so that is my plan at this point. So, not really a whole lot going on with this episode, but thought I'd let you know what to expect coming up. So, next episode should be a level 1 adventure, right? The beginning of a level 1 adventure for we're going to call it the Rose Lake Adventuring Guild. Rag. There we go. All right. So until then, this is Prof E signing off.